This is a key on adding and subtracting polynomials. So if we look at number one, we have this polynomial is being added to this polynomial. Now you can't see the exponents very well, so I'm going to go ahead and write this on another paper. And so here's number one. And so the idea when adding two polynomials is not that difficult to do. So basically you're going to group your like terms. And let's go ahead and write this in descending order. So what I would do in number one is look at the like terms. And so we have the largest exponent being 3. So notice there's an x cubed here and an x cubed here. So those are like terms. So in your mind, you're thinking this. Well, I'm going to combine negative 2x cubed plus a positive 6x cubed. So it looks like this. Okay? And so if you look at the x squared terms, there's one here, and then there's another one there. So I'm going to combine those two. So I'm going to put those two in a group. So I'm going to say plus, and then I'm going to add. So you're adding here. So you're going to add these two terms. So you have 6x squared plus x squared. Okay? And then we have the x term. So I have a negative 7x here and a negative 2x here, right? So mentally, you're thinking this. Well, I'm going to add a negative 7x and a negative 2x together. See that? Negative 7x, negative 2x. And then you have these right here. And so those are your constants. And so constants are like terms. And so I'm going to add a positive 2 and a negative 7 together. All right, so that's what I have. So, so mentally, this is what you're thinking. When I add two polynomials, I'm going to group my like terms together and add them. So I have negative 2x squared plus 6x squared. Okay. Then the x squared terms, I have 6x squared and a positive x squared. So that's what you see here. And I'm going to add to those the next group, which is a negative 7x and a negative 2x. So that's what you see here. And then the constants, a positive 2 and a negative 2. And then all you're going to do now is in those little four groups that I've formed, you're going to combine like terms. So when combining like terms, basically you're going to be adding their coefficients. So a negative 2 and a positive 6 is a positive 4. So this becomes 4x cubed. Okay, so remember when adding when adding like terms, your exponent stays the same. So don't say negative 2x cubed plus 6x cubed is 4x to the 6. Okay, so the exponents stay the same. So you have negative 2x cubes here and a positive 6x cubes here. So altogether you have how many x cubed? You have 4. Okay. Over here you have 6x squared. Now remember this coefficient right here that's implied to be a 1. So 6 plus 1 is 7. So this becomes 7x squared. And notice I'm putting this in descending order. So remember, descending order, you go from largest exponent to the smallest. And so negative 7x and a negative 2x is a negative 9x. So I'm adding a negative 9x here. Negative 7, negative 2 is a negative 9. So when you write it, though, you write it like this, just like this. So you have 4x cubed plus 7x squared minus 9x. All right. And then 2 subtract 7 means 2 plus the negative 7, so that's a negative 5. All right. And so that's what we get. All right. So that's number one. So it's very simple. It's not a difficult process. Okay. So number two, we have this for number two. We have 4c to the 5th minus 3c to the 4th plus 4c squared minus 7. So we have this polynomial, and I'm adding it to this polynomial, 2c squared plus c squared minus 3c minus 1. Now, to be honest with you, I did make a mistake here. I did not mean to have these two exponents being the same, but it is. So we're going to continue on with this. All right, so what I would do first, since this polynomial, there are two like terms, I'd just go ahead right now and combine those two like terms. So let's do that first. So I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite this over. I have 4c to the 5th minus 3c to the 4th plus 4c squared minus 7 plus, and then 2c squared plus 1c squared is 3c squared, and then minus 3c minus 1. All right, so that's where I'm at. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and group our like terms together. And let's go ahead and put this in descending order. So and since I only have one variable, it's pretty easy to put this in descending order. So we're going to put this going from largest exponent to smallest. So the largest exponent I see is 5. So I have 4c to the 5th. I don't have any other c to the 5th, so I'm just going to rewrite it over. So I have 4c to the 5th. So that takes care of this term. Then the next term in descending orders is the largest exponent is 4. So I have a negative 3c to the 4th. I don't see any other term with c to the 4th in it. So I'm going to rewrite this. So minus 3c to the 4th. Okay? Then the next largest exponent I see is 2. So there's no c cubed, but there's a c squared. And so I have 4c squared, and then notice there's another c squared here, right? So let's go ahead and group those mentally. This is what you're saying. You're saying, remember, you're adding these. So you're saying 4c squared plus 3c squared, which can be written like this, 4c squared plus 3c squared. And then the next term would be the minus 3c. See, there's no c term here. All right, so I'm just going to rewrite it. And I'm going to add that to, now I do have some constants I can combine, these two, right? All right, so I have plus a negative 7 minus 1. So negative 7 and a negative 1, that's what this is. So this plus this is this, okay? So let's go ahead, there's only two groups here, so let's go ahead and combine those. So the answer should be 4c to the 5th minus 3c to the 4th. 4 plus 3 is 7, so that's plus 7c squared minus 3c, and a negative 7 plus a negative 1 is a negative 8. All right, and so that is number 2. Okay, number 3. In number 3, we're adding these two polynomials. I have 5x squared minus 3xy plus 2y squared plus, and then a negative 3x squared plus y squared. Notice in number 3 you have two variables here. You have x's and y's. All right, so first of all, be careful when trying to find like terms. But in terms of writing in descending order, I'm gonna go from I'm gonna put the x squared first. I'm gonna put the y squared last. All right, so let's go ahead and write it like that. Okay, so first of all, let's remember we're adding, so that's the easy part. So when you add two polynomials, that's easy to do. We're just going to group the like terms and add them together. All right, so be careful. Let's go ahead and make sure we group the like terms together. I have an x squared here, so 5x squared. I see an x squared here. All right, so that means that those two terms here are like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and group them. So mentally, this is what you're saying. 5x squared. And then plus a negative 3x squared means this, 5x squared minus 3x squared. So this plus this, same thing as this, okay? Then I have an xy term here, but I don't see any other like terms here. I don't see any xy's in this polynomial. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this down, put it down, okay? Then let's look at the y squareds. I have a 2y squared here, and I have a y squared here. So those are like terms. So I'm going to group those. So I have 2y squared plus y squared. Okay? And now notice I have two groups that I need to simplify. So 5x squared minus 3x squared is 2x squared minus 3xy. And then 2y squared plus 1y squared is 3y squared. All right? And so that is the answer to number 3. All right, now let's look at number 4. So number 4, so here's number 4. All right, so in number 4 we have this. We have 3x squared minus 7x plus 1, and then I'm subtracting this polynomial, 5x squared minus 2x minus 8. All right, so when subtracting, see this time we're subtracting. When subtracting two polynomials, Remember in a previous course, or even when we looked at these problems today, if you have something like this, -7 subtract 8, remember what that means. So whenever you have a subtraction problem, we always change that to addition, right? So in your mind, you're saying -7 plus the opposite of 8, which is a -8. So notice I use the word, so we change subtraction to addition, but we add the opposite. So remember the phrase, add the opposite, okay? Add opposite, add opposite. So what you want to do when subtracting two polynomials is you want to change this to an addition problem. So you want to make it look like the previous three that we just did. You want to change it to an addition problem. So where you're adding two polynomials. So to do that, remember the phrase, add the opposite. So the first polynomial stays the same. So you have 3x squared minus 7x plus 1, and then we're going to add the opposite. So you're taking the opposite of all these terms. So this polynomial has 3 terms. So here we go. The opposite of a positive 5x squared is a negative 5x squared. The opposite of a negative 2x is a positive 2x. And the opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. And now I'm adding two polynomials. So let's go ahead and group like terms together. So, and let's put in descending order. There's only one variable there, so we're going to put the variable in descending order. So I have 3x squared term here, and then I can combine it with this term. So you see you're adding, which is a negative 5x squared. So I'm going to write it like this: 3x squared, and then minus 5x squared. Okay? Then the next group, I know I can combine a negative 7x with a positive 2x. I'm going to say plus negative 7x plus 2x, just like this. And then the constants. So I'm going to group my constants together. Positive 1 and a positive 8. 1 plus 8. All right. So now let's go ahead and simplify each of these groups. So 3x squared and a negative 5x squared is a negative 2x squared. A negative 7x plus 2x is a negative 5x. And notice I'm writing it. Okay, so write it like this. 1 plus 8 is 9, so you get plus 9. So the answer is negative 2x squared minus 5x plus 9. All right, so that's number 4. Okay, number 5. We have this for number 5. So we have x cubed plus 5x to the 4th minus 3 plus 8x squared, and you're subtracting this polynomial, 7x cubed plus 8x minus 1. All right? Okay, so I'm subtracting those two polynomials, so let's go ahead and change this to an addition problem. And so I get x cubed plus 5x to the 4th minus 3 plus 8x squared plus the opposite of each of those terms, so that this polynomial has 3 terms: 7x cubed, 8x, and a negative 1. So the opposite of 7x cubed is a negative 7x cubed. The opposite of 8x is a negative 8x, and the opposite of a negative 1 is a positive 1. All right, so I only have one variable involved, the variable x. So let's go ahead and put this in descending order. So I see that this this term, x to the 4th, so the exponent 4 is the highest degree. And I don't see any other x to the 4th, so I'm just go ahead and rewrite this down. So that becomes 5x to the 4th. Okay, so I can't group it with any other term, any other like term, I should say. All right, the next one's x cubed, right? So I can combine those. Those are like terms here. So let's go ahead and write out of this. So I can say plus x cubed, and then you're combining with this one, so minus 7x cubed. So this plus this is this. Okay. Then the x squareds, there's no x squared here, so I'm just going to bring this down. So plus 8x squared. And then let's see. So the x term, there's one here, but there's none here. So I'm going to bring it down. So minus 8x. And then the constant. So I have two constants I can combine. A negative 3 plus a positive 1. So negative 3 plus 1. All right, so simplifying those two groups, which contain like terms, I get 5x to the fourth. And then 1x cubed and a negative 7x cubed is a negative, see, that's a negative 6x cubed, right? So plus a negative 6x cubed means this, minus 6x cubed. So write it like this. Then plus 8x squared minus 8x, and then negative 3 plus 1 is a negative 2. So you're adding a negative 2, which means the same thing as subtracting 2. And that is it. So there's your answer for number 5. Okay? All right. Let's see, number 6. So let's look at number 6. So in number 6, we have 6a squared plus ab plus 2b squared, and then I'm subtracting 2a squared minus 4ab plus 5b squared. All right, so I have two variables. So just like we did in the previous problem, and I think it was the one with, if I can find it real quick. So let's see, like number 3. So just like we did with number 3, we're gonna put the x squared first, and we'll put the y squared first here. So over here, we're gonna put the a squared first, and then b squared last. But remember, you are subtracting those two polynomials. So let's change this to an addition problem. So when I change that to addition problem, you rewrite the first polynomial over. So 6a squared plus 2ab. Oops, sorry, that's ab. Let me make sure I wrote this correctly. Yep, that's ab. And then plus 2b squared. And then you're going to add the opposite of each of those terms. So this term is 2a squared. This term is a negative 4ab. And this term is 5b squared. So the opposite of each one. So the opposite of 2a squared is a negative 2a squared. The opposite of a negative 4ab is a positive 4ab. And the opposite of a positive 5b squared is a negative 5b squared. All right, and now we're just going to combine our like terms. So I have a 6a squared here, and I can combine it with a negative 2a squared. So mentally, this is what you're saying. 6a squared minus 2a squared. So 6a squared plus a negative 2a squared is this. Then the AB, so I have 1ab and 4ab, right? So I can group those. So AB plus 4ab. And then the b squareds, so I have this term and this term. So remember, this is 2b squared. This is a negative 5b squared. And you're adding those. So when you write it, you're going to say 2b squared minus 5b squared. Okay, so now let's go ahead and simplify each of those groups, and that should be our answer. So 6a squared minus 2a squared, so 6 minus 2 is 4, so that'll be 4a squared. 1ab plus 4ab is 5ab. And then 2b squared and a negative 5b squared, 2 and a negative 5 is a negative 3, right? So this right here is a negative 3b squared. So you're adding a negative 3b squared, which means the same thing as subtracting 3b squared. And that is the answer to number 6. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 7. So here's number 7. All right, number 7, we have this for number 7. All right, we have 2.5 x squared. So we have decimals here. So remember, when you have decimals, leave it as decimals. When you have fractions, leave it as fractions. 2.5 x squared minus 7.8x plus 3.2. And I'm adding that to this polynomial, which is 1.9 x squared plus 1.2x minus 7.4. Okay, so let's go ahead and notice it's one variable, so it's pretty easy to put this in descending order. So I have an x squared term here, and I have an x squared term here. So let's go ahead and combine those. So 2 and 5/10 x squared plus 1 and 9/10 x squared. So I'm going to combine those two together. Then the next term would be the x term. So I'm going to add a negative 7 and 8/10 x, 2 with 1 and 2/10 x. So plus 1 and 2/10 x. And then the constants, so I have 3 and 2/10 and a negative 7 and 4/10. So 3 and 2/10 and then a negative 7 and 4/10. Okay, so let's go ahead and simplify those groups, those like terms. So remember, when adding decimals, we have to align our place values. So these are both positive, 2.5 and 1.9. So it's easy to add positive decimals. So let's just go ahead and align them. So you have 2.5 plus 1 and 9/10. So I align my tenths place and my ones place. So 9 plus 5 is 14. So 4 carry the 1. Don't forget your decimal point. And then 2, 1, and 1 is 4. So get 4 and 4/10. So that's right here. So that one's easy. That becomes right here. That's right here. That becomes 4 and 4/10 x squared. Okay. Now you got to remember some things you learned in previous courses about adding numbers with different signs. See, this is negative. This is positive. So remember what the phrase is. So remember, we're talking about adding signed numbers. So adding signed numbers. So y'all didn't have any difficulty with the previous ones, and that was because when we add signed numbers, it's pretty easy to do because those were integers. But here we have decimals. So let's talk about those signed numbers. So notice the coefficient here is negative 7 and 8/10. And I want to add that to this coefficient, which is a positive 1 and 2/10. Okay? So when adding signed numbers, remember the words. When adding two numbers, when adding signed numbers whose signs are different, when adding two numbers whose signs are different, first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the absolute value of each of those numbers. So the absolute value of negative 7.8 is 7.8, and the absolute value of 1.2 is 1.2. Okay? See, the signs are different. So once you take the absolute value, then you're going to subtract those absolute values that you just wrote. But always put, when you subtract, always put the larger absolute value on top. So we get 7.8, subtract 1.2. Okay? So then we subtract just like we did in, just like you would do. So you align your place value. So align my tenths and align my ones. 2 from 8 is 6. Decimal point. 1 from 7 is 6. Okay, so I get 6.6. But remember, the rest of the rule says this. Then you take the 1, then you take the sign of the number that had the larger absolute value. So here's the larger absolute value. That sign was negative. So this becomes right here a negative 6.6x. So you're adding a negative 6.6x, which is the same thing as saying subtracting 6.6x. Okay? Now in your calculator, basically, let's see if I can quickly find my calculator. Let's see where the calculator is. Okay, so when using your calculator, you're basically saying this. So watch, you have negative 7.8 plus 1.2. So plus 1.2 equals a negative 6.6. Okay? All right. But if you didn't have access to a calculator, that's what you would have had to remember from a previous course when you dealt with adding two numbers whose signs are different. Okay? All right. And then same thing here. So same thing, right? So look, I have 3.2, and I'm adding a negative 7.4. That's what this is, right? 3.2 and a negative 7.4. So notice I'm adding two numbers whose signs are different. So first of all, I got to look at their absolute value. So the absolute value of 3.2 is 3.2. The absolute value of a negative 7.4 is 7.4. And so I'm now going to subtract this, but always put the large absolute value on top when subtracting. So now let's go ahead and subtract 2. These are decimal points here. 2 from 4 is 2, decimal point. 3 from 7 is 4. Okay, but remember the rest of the phrase says, then the answer is going to be the sign. You're going to take the sign of the number that had the larger absolute value. So here's the larger absolute value right here. That sign is negative. So this becomes a negative 4 2/10. All right, so this right here is a negative 4 2/10. So you're adding a negative 4 2/10, which means the same thing as subtracting 4 2/10. And so that's the answer for number 7. All right, let's look at number 8. Number 8, you have this. It says subtract, and you have those words, subtract 3x minus 7 from 7x plus 1. So you're subtracting this polynomial from this polynomial. So when you're subtracting, the order matters when you subtract. So let's remind ourselves about something. So if I said subtract 4 from, let's say, 8, subtract 4 from 8, remember the order in which you wrote this. So you're subtracting 4 from this number. So you got to put this number first and then subtract the 4. So this right here looks like this. So that becomes 4. It is not 4 minus 8. That's wrong, because 4 minus 8 is a negative 4, and those are not the same. All right, so that's not true. So when you see the phrase subtract a polynomial, let's call this a polynomial, subtract a polynomial from this one, you put this one first. So this becomes 7x plus 1, subtract this polynomial, which is 3x minus 7. So make sure you put that subtraction symbol here. All right, and now we're going to change this to an addition problem. So I get 7x, this polynomial, 7x plus 1, plus the opposite of each of those terms. So the opposite of 3x is a negative 3x. The opposite of a negative 7 is a positive 7. And let's go ahead and group our like terms. So I can combine 7x and a negative 3x together. And I can combine the constants. So I can combine 1 and 7 together. And so 7x minus 3x is 4x. And then 1 plus 7 is 8. All right, and there's the answer. Okay, number 9. So number 9, we have 2 fifths x plus 1/4 y. And I want to add that to 1/5 x minus 9/4 y, right? Okay. Now you have fractions here. Now make sure you leave them as fractions because it could have been that some of these fractions would not have terminated. So just leave them as fractions. Okay, so let's go ahead and group the x terms together. So I'm going to put the x first. So that becomes 2 fifths x plus 1/5 x. And then I'm going to combine, I'm going to group the y's together. So I have 1/4 y subtract 9/4 y, right? So now notice that these coefficients of the x's have the same denominator. So that's easy to add. So 2 fifths plus 1/5 is 3 fifths, right? So that's 3 fifths x. 3 fifths x. And over here, 1/4 subtract 9/4. That's what this says. 1/4 subtract 9/4. The denominators are the same. So 1 subtract 9 is a negative 8 divided by 4. And I'll simplify this. Negative 8 divided by 4 is a negative 2. So this becomes, right here, negative 2y. So adding a negative 2y means the same thing as subtracting 2y. And there's the answer. So 3 fifths x, subtract 2y. Okay? And then finally, number 10. So let's look at number 10. And I think I can put number 10 at the bottom here. So let's do that. So here's number 10. I have 7x squared y minus 4xy minus 8xy squared plus 4x squared y minus 6xy. All right. Now be careful because you have two variables here, and so it's pretty easy if you're not looking at this carefully to when rewriting things to put the exponents wrong. So just be careful when doing that. You are adding those, so that's the easy kind. And let's just go ahead and put this term first. So there's no, see how when we did this one, we put it in descending order. So it's pretty easy to put that in descending order because there's only one variable, right? Here, you can't really talk about putting this in descending order because each term contains multiple variables. So you have xy, 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 all right, with different exponents. All right, so let's just say I'm going to go ahead and put the x squared y first. But let's check and see if I can combine that with anything else. So you got to be careful, look carefully. I have an x squared y, so those are like terms here. So I'm going to group those together. So 7x squared y plus 4x squared y. All right. Then the next term I see is an xy term. So a negative 4xy. Here's one right here, a negative 6xy. So those are like terms, right? Right here. So let's put those together. So plus negative 4xy and a negative 6xy. And it looks like the only term that's left over all by itself will be this one. So minus 8xy squared. Okay, now let's combine. 7x squared y plus another 4 of them, right? 4x squared y's will give us 11 x squared y. So 11x squared y. Okay, right here, a negative 4xy and a negative 6xy is a negative 10xy. So you're adding, that's xy. So you're adding a negative 10xy's, which means the same thing as subtracting 10xy. And then you have this one left over, minus 8xy squared. And there is the answer. Okay, so that is the key to this worksheet.